Hi everyone, bonjour. Welcome to the first episode of Tasting with Julien, aka the Social Vignerons Wine Tasting Show. Today we're tasting some Margaux wine from the last great vintage of the Bordeaux area. We're going to talk about Margaux, we're going to talk about Bordeaux, we're going to talk about wine. Because this is the very first episode of this show, I need a bit of help from you. I'd like you to watch this video and tell me what you think about it, the type of information that you'd like to hear more of, what type of wine you'd like me to review and share with you. Essentially, this is to start a conversation. But before we do that, let's roll out the intro. Okay, I'm gonna make this intro a little bit better, but I just wanted to get this thing rolling. Before we start pouring the wine and talking about things, because this is a Bordeaux wine and it's a young wine, I'm gonna start decanting it a little bit, giving it a bit of air, so it can express itself a little bit better. So let's start with this. So then I can leave the wine settle a little bit while I talk. Here we go. Here we are. Let's put this aside for now. Ooh, I can already smell the blackberry, blackcurrant aromas in this wine. For those of you that don't know me, so I'm Julien, you've understood that. I'm a former winemaker based here in France. I studied in Bordeaux and I've spent about 10 years making wine all around the world. I've worked in Spain, I've worked in Tuscany, briefly in California, I spent a bit of time in Australia, so I was essentially a flying winemaker for about 10 years. I'm also a wine writer now and wine blogger with my blog called socialvignerons.com that I launched back in 2014. It's been pretty successful. I've loved writing about wine, I love sharing knowledge about wine. Writing is a great way to share impressions about wine and make available the quality assessment of wines. So I've enjoyed that, but I've been looking for a much more direct way to interact with the wine community around the world. I think the video format could be a much better way to do it. Wine is meant to be shared face to face with people and enjoyed face to face. It's a lot easier as well to describe and taste and describe a wine when you're talking to somebody. A lot better also, I think, but you let me know what you think. Let's start by talking a little bit about Margaux. I'm sure many of you already know a lot about Margaux, but Margaux is on the left bank of the Bordeaux region, so that's the left side of the Garonne River that crosses the Bordeaux city. Margaux is on the left bank, it's part of the Médoc, it's the south of the Médoc area. Margaux is probably one of the most famous appellations in Bordeaux for a relatively simple reason. It produces a lot of the best wines in the area. You're probably familiar with the 1855 classification ordered by Napoleon in the 19th century. And he ordered to rank the best wines of the Bordeaux area at the time. Margaux boasts the most number of classified growth in the whole of the Médoc. It has obviously one first growth, that's Chateau Margaux. It has 5 second growth, that's more than any other appellation. It's got 10 third growth, I think it's got 4 fourth growth, and 2 fifth growth. So 21 classified growth. Margaux wine is also famous for being more elegant, more refined, and have a distinctive floral character. If you compare it to the Pauillac appellation, which is just north, Pauillac tend to be much fuller bodied, much denser fruit, while Margaux has the Bordeaux left bank density. Margaux is mainly based on Cabernet Sauvignon, it's where Cabernet Sauvignon pretty much comes from. It originates from Bordeaux, and it's Margaux is considered to be one of the most purest, most refined expression of Cabernet Sauvignon in the world. Today we're going to be tasting a wine that's called Chateau Prieuré Lichine. So this is the fourth classified growth. The vintage is 2016. It's actually written on the label that this sample has been prepared especially for me. So thank you to Chateau Prieuré Lichine for sending this wine. To go through the history of the estate, it was originally a chateau that was established by the monks, the Benedictine monks during the Middle Ages, hence the name Prieuré, which means prairie in English. But it was bought by a very famous writer and very famous négociant, Alexis Lichine. So he bought this in 1951, and when he did, so he added his name to the wine. Because this is not Chateau Margaux, this is not one of the very, very top estates of Margaux. You probably know Chateau Palmer, Marquis de Termes, and some of the greatest names in Margaux. So this stays relatively affordable. This is about a $50 bottle of Margaux wine. So, but because it's from a great vintage, hopefully it does taste really good. Changed hands again. It was bought by another négociant, the Maison Balland, back in 1999, and they've done a lot of work on the vineyards. They've expanded the vineyard as well, and they've bought themselves a brand new, or they built themselves a brand new cellar with loads of concrete tanks, so they can work on the vinification of different vineyards separately. So since 1999, the quality of the wines there have increased. So let's get on to tasting this little baby. Straight away, the color on this wine is very dense. It's quite impressive. It's dense, nearly black to the core. To the rim, you can see. Don't know whether you can, but I can see that it's got a lot of purple hues. That's characteristic of young wines, and this is definitely a young wine. So let's swirl it a little bit. So straight away, this is a fruit-driven wine. It bursts with fresh and crisp aromas of red berries. I'm getting fresh acidic raspberry, also a lot of blackberry, dark cherry as well. This is, I believe, there's about 55% Cabernet Sauvignon, 45% Merlot. You can definitely smell the influence of the Merlot. Very often Merlot, especially in Bordeaux, come through as dark cherry, typical dark cherry, almost caramel type of aroma. There is this molecule that's called furanil that is very concentrated and typical of Merlot. And that molecule, if it's relatively low concentration, it smells like cherry. When you reach very high concentration, it smells like caramel. It's the same molecule, but and you'll often find in Merlot this sort of caramelly dark cherry, and it's definitely present here. A lot of berries. It's the touch of plum. 2016 vintage is considered excellent. Maybe not as consistent and not as good as 2015. So 2016 started really quite early. Winter 2015-2016, between 2015 and 2016, was one of the warmest on record in Bordeaux. So the season started quite early, and then it was followed by a spring that was really, really wet and watery, but quite warm still. So the vignerons, the growers in Bordeaux were quite worried when summer started, because the flower was rainy and it was not looking that good. But followed a very long and super dry summer, one of the driest summer in the Bordeaux region on record, and so that allowed the maturity of the grapes to catch up, and that also allowed all the wine estates to to wait for the grapes to ripen and pick exactly when they want it. So, so there is richness to the nose. So very fruity, but because this is a Margaux wine, this is a wine that goes through wine barrels, half of the barrels on you, on this wine. So you can smell the oak, but it's very well integrated, and this just simply adds depth to the wine. So straight away you can taste that this is a very smooth wine. It's also a very powerful wine. This is dry, obviously, as we expect from Bordeaux. Tannins are super soft. You get the grape from the Cabernet Sauvignon grapes. So Cabernet Sauvignon in a blend, like a Bordeaux blend, come through with slightly edgy tannins, solid acidity, and it gives the wine all that tension all along the palate. While Merlot tends to be fuller bodied and provide the richness and the silkiness of the tannins. So both elements are clearly in there. I believe this wine also has 5% Petit Verdot. Petit Verdot generally adds a touch of maybe floral greenness, a touch of mintiness to the wines. It also adds a punch of raw granulous tannins to a blend. So yeah, certainly a lot of bursting fresh red berry fruit on the palate, complemented by a huge diversity of oaky, sweet spices, clove, nutmeg, the caramel I was talking about, a hint of vanilla. The oak is well integrated. It sort of supports, spices up, and sweetens the fruit character a little bit. Not a huge, massive density, but it's silky. Yeah, silky, already very enjoyable, while this is only a baby of a wine, really. Still very enjoyable. So it promises to the wine is also super long, so it promises to become a very enjoyable wine. On such a wine, ideally you'd want to wait at least 5 years to let it soften up. 10 years if you can hold on to it, but it'll probably age really well for like 15 years. So I mean, but if you buy this now and you give it 10 years, it should become, from there on, it should start becoming a really interesting wine. Definitely some aging potential here. The acidity is strong. The fruit is extremely, it's got all the length and concentration that you want from a Bordeaux wine to age well. So yeah, backing up this wine, a wine around the 91, 92 mark, maybe 91 plus. But I would think with the bouquet and the evolution of the wine over time, this will creep up slightly, and I would, in 10 years, this will be a 93 Bordeaux wine. Good balance between richness of fruit and freshness of the acidity and of the red berry character. So a very good wine. That's pretty much it for me. Let me know what you thought about this video. It's probably a little too long. I might try to make it a little bit shorter, but anyway, let me know what you think. Let me know what you found interesting in here, what I should talk about more or less. I'm looking forward to sharing more here of my knowledge and hearing from you and what you think. Cheers.